Welcome to our maiden edition of our Folkloric Symbol Show on Metro TV. They say art is symbol because man is symbol. Art is a depiction of life. So on this show, we talk about symbols, especially our Ghanaian folkloric symbols. Welcome. We are doing this in collaboration with the National Folklore Board. We don't only talk about symbols here, we also talk about the symbolic language of proverbs, where we have a segment called the Sage's Corner. And we talk about, we give you proverbs and then we dissect the proverbs with you so that your language will also be very rich when you are talking. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our Folkloric Symbol Show on Metro TV. As I said earlier, this is a show where we talk about symbols, our folkloric symbols. And we are doing this in collaboration with the National Folklore Board, and it's sponsored by Danwell Insurance. So you have to stick and stay with us. And we have the great minds here who are going to help us to talk about these symbols. We have Dr. Samson Appiah from the Sociology Department of the University of Ghana. Welcome, Doc. We also have Sarah Noko Anku, a lawyer and a board member of the National Folklore Board. And then we have Madame Bernice and Deh-Kumah. She is the director of the National Folklore Board. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Doc, let's start with you. Tell us, what are symbols? What really do they do in African settings?
Thank you very much. Yes, so, symbols are part of a society's culture. When we say culture, we know culture is a way of life of a people. Sociologically, we say that culture is that complex whole that defines a people in terms of their heritage. Now, there are four very important components of society's culture. We have the norms, the values, the language, and the symbols. Now, symbols as component of a culture tells us about people's way of life. Now, symbols, apart from being representations of people's way, are also a way of communication. So the symbols tell us about the people's history, where they came from, it tells us how the people relate to each other. And symbols are also very significant because they throw more light on society's, social dimensions. They teach issues about tolerance, issues about courage, and in the past, symbols were also used as part of interaction. Now, the symbols are also emotive ideas about lifestyles. So they tell us, most of the Adinkra symbols or other societies, they are things that also were used, especially, and most of them originated from society's experience with wars and also how they dealt with their environment. So they are very important part of culture because without them, people cannot communicate. Without them, people cannot even show their true identity. So when civil society's culture, symbols play a very important aspect of it. Okay,
so let's take the Adinkra symbols, the most popular of them all. How did they come into being?
So, for example, the Adinkra symbols were originally named after a man by name Ajiman Adinkra, and he was supposed to be a chief or somebody who was into wars, and later so the symbols were basically things that he used as a means of, an identity for himself. To other society, it was more about Kan society. Other society, the Bono region also adopted it. So there were things that were used as a means of communicating. So this Adinkra symbol, and as we start to go on later, there are things that show a lot of things in society. Some use it, as part of textiles. They are used in terms of, other aspects of society. But they are emotive because they shows about society's way of life. Now, most of the symbols have significance depending on the context. And there are so many of them. There are very few that most of us know. But if you do a whole study on them, it depicts a lot of significance. It can be used as things of courage. Some of them were used in wars. So some even depict tolerance. Some also depict faithfulness. So these were things that were used as a means of communicating. And also, apart from that, they were used as a way of teaching people values in society. And it's one of the things I always tell my students is that the typical Ghanaian African value was to teach, and I'll give an example yesterday, that's growing up, my mother always tell you that when you meet anybody, whether you know the person or not, you must always greet. Now, some of these symbols were also as a means of showing people how to respect in society. So they became part and parcel of communication, also identity, and also a means of teaching people values.
Okay, so the symbols in terms of artists, the visual arts of it, because we know that it has to depict something. But what were the thoughts that went into, especially Jinyami symbol, for instance, looking like the way it is looking? Yeah. Why is Akuma looking like the way it's looking? Or why is Jewetuko looking like the way it's looking? Is it that people were so innovative, so the moment you talk, they decide to say, okay, so what you're saying can look like this in writing?
So you see, let the Jinyami, for example, you see, this also explains the fact that before Christianity, the African or the Ghanaian had their own idea of God. Okay. So this idea about they brought Christianity to us, it wasn't like we are just sitting here doing nothing. So our forefathers or our fathers had a conception of what is God. So look at the Jinyami symbol. So the point is that whatever you are doing as a human being, it is only the supreme being that is in control. So it tells also about how our forefathers, our ancestors, tried to also explain their context. And I want to say that, you see, that's why culture, we say, is a man-made part of the environment. As people try to respond to the demands and the problems of the society, they create these things as a means of communicating and also trying to make life meaningful to themselves. So the Jinyami, for example, is the fact, yes, whatever you are doing, God is the supreme. Always depend on God. The Akuma symbol, the concept of love. That if you laugh about how to relate to people, that we are one people, we must always interact with others, no discrimination. So it's also a response to how people responded to the environment, the demands, the problems were what brought people to design these things as society. Yes.
So it's like the philosophical explanation of innateness of being.
Yes, so you see that if you look at African thought, African philosophy, they'll tell you that the whole, like Professor Kwame Jechi, about how the African communalism, that the African believe that, so I am because we are. Yeah. So these are things that they created as a means of also explaining their existence. So nobody will put the child down and teach this God. As the child begins to grow, the concept of socialization, difference between right and wrong. I was telling the student yesterday, I was teaching culture that, for example, my mother will look at you, and the mere sight of looking at you communicates something to you. She may not even have to even beat you. So these were things that were socialized. So these were also exemplified in terms of the symbols to also teach the younger ones. So people are not born with culture. Okay. So how do I come to know that Jinyami means this? It means that from childhood, the socialization takes place and people are inculcated into these values to be part of their society.
So it's both rational and tabula rasa.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so we have the National Folklore Board here to also talk to us about the fact that these symbols, though we see them everywhere, you think that you can just pick them, they are actually the property of Ghana. So when you are taking them, you know they are custodians of it. So they are like the archivists of our folkloric symbols. So we have the legal practitioner, as I introduced there. So what really is the mandate of the National Folklore Board, Madam?
The Folklore Board was established by the Copyright Act of Ghana 2005, Act 690. And the mandate as provided in the law is that the board is expected to administer, to monitor, and to register our folklore. A Adinkra symbol is one of such. It is actually provided in the law that folklore includes a Adinkra symbol, kente, and so on and so forth. So what it means is that the board is responsible for creating a register of such folkloric symbols and make sure that we preserve this folklore of Ghana. We also promote the folklore and above all, make sure that whoever uses this folklore, not for personal purposes. There are certain exceptions or exclusions in the law that will allow you to use it without recourse to the Folklore Board. But otherwise, if you're using it for commercial purposes, you are supposed to apply to the Folklore Board for the permission to use the folklore. And you're supposed to pay certain fees to the board to that effect. And these fees are kept in a fund purposely for the promotion and preservation of our own folklore.
Okay, so for instance, Gasamai, the son of Nia Monkote, Afutukute has been innovative lately, and he has also come up with new designs. The question is, someone like that, he believes that a thing belongs to him. How is that folklore? How is that folkloric in this?
So for the symbol to be part of folklore, it must be some literary or artistic work or scientific expression that is created, developed, and preserved by communities, and also by unknown artists. Having said that, under the Copyright Act, you are not allowed to transform, adopt somebody's copyrighted work, and this is being treated as copyright. Okay. So as to whether he has actually developed new Edinkra symbols or some modification or transformation or translation of the Edinkra symbol, I cannot speak to that because I haven't seen that yet. Okay. But if it is that, then he also must take steps to work with the folklore board so that he also does not infringe on our rights, because these rights belong to the state and the president is holding it in trust for us. And we, the folklore board, work on behalf of the president.
And Bernice, what is the process of getting registered when maybe you select a particular symbol for a commercial purpose? Well, what is the process?
Thank you. You will walk to our office, and we have a form. I will give the form to you. You will fill. There are questions that we want to know, rightly as the legal person have said, whether you have changed the form, you have design it to suit your business. That form will request for all those information. If you are just starting your business, so based on that, and then we will give you a license so that we regulate it. You know, when something is heritage, we are not too much concerned about the commercialization. It has a history, something that identifies us. So we regulate it so that you don't overuse it. So that otherwise, when it becomes overused, it's no longer as our history. So we look at that component as making sure that you also not over-commercialize our folklore elements. So the form asks all those questions so that when those questions are provided, we then proceed to give you a license for 1 year. So we make sure every 1 year you renew your license so that we know that this is what you are doing, if there is any alteration to what we have, and we can regulate it on the behalf of Ghana.
Recently, there was this Range Rover that came out, and there were a lot of the Edinkra symbols, especially that was used as a design on the car. And everybody was asking, has the folklore board seen this? Did you see that car?
Yes.
And what steps did you take in trying to tell them that? Or did they come to you before that?
Those that do not come to National Folklore Board for permission, and we identify through maybe social media, we have a monitoring team. That the monitoring team goes around to identify those who are using any of the folklore elements, not only the symbols, anything that belongs to us as a nation and is part of folklore. They go around scouting for those who are using that. And when we identify those institutions, we write to them. We write to them that we realize that you are using a folklore element for your business. We realize it's not for education purpose. When we realize you are using it for education, that means you are also assisting in the preservation process. We are not concerned about that. We encourage you to continue with the education so that we don't lose them over the years. But when it's for business, we write to them. So particular to this Range Rover issue, yes, we've written to them. And our lawyer said sometimes if you take a legal action immediately, the person will say we are not aware. So we should follow all the necessary process, write to them, make sure we inform them that this is for Ghana or this is for the people of Ghana, so you cannot use it for business. When all these procedures are followed and they refuse, then the legal unit will take action. And so she's been very supportive to us. Anytime we write to, recently I received a letter from one institution that was challenging us not taking royalties for them. We call on her and she has advised us how to respond to those legal, and the letter was from their legal department. So we speak to her, being a board member. That's why the government thought very wise that we need a lawyer. So she's on the board, advises to all those people who try to use any law to fight us not to take the royalties from them.
Okay. Have you been able to curate all these symbols from southern to the northern Ghana? Have you been able to curate everything?
Yes, we are working on that project. Lucky for us, we got a grant or funding from government of France. So we are doing inventory. One of our mandates is to have a register of all folklore elements in Ghana. Okay. So we start the process. We have done a capacity building because we need people who understand what to do. So we have done 10 days capacity building for them. And sooner or later, they'll start going to all the 16 regions to collect all the inventories we have. And so that will inform our register. So we are working on that.
Great, great. Dr. Samson, for me, I believe that there's a spiritual, like I said, there's a spiritual or a religious aspect to all these symbols. When, for instance, you adopt a particular symbol, does it have any spiritual influence on you? Does it, like what we all believe in African set, especially in our Kan setting, the totems, for instance, the people believe that these totems have some kind of impact on their people. So do you believe that if I pick an Adinkra symbol, for instance, or any Gasamai, and I decide to, you know, use it for my life, would it have any impact on my life, spiritually?
I think as the realize is folk laws are also part of society's culture. And you see, as I mentioned earlier on, these things are man-made.
Okay.
Society tries to respond to the demands of the environment. So, for example, Deh-Kumah will tell you that religion is not society worshipping God, but society benefiting itself. Okay. So if you go to most traditional societies, for example, when they say we don't go to fish on a particular day, the question I ask is, does God benefit directly from that? It is society we're saying that because we fish from Monday to maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, let's keep one day so that we preserve the fish. So you see, so these things are part of human interaction. At the end of the day, they help society develop. For example, I was telling someone when I was young, where I grew up in the Volta region, where we fetch our water in the stream, the taboo or the myth was that we don't go and fetch water there on Wednesdays.
Okay.
You can go there and wash, but you don't bring the water to the village.
Okay.
Now, when I was growing up, I realized that some of these things were very sociological and very important, because as children, we go and disturb the water every day. But on that Wednesday alone, the water is kept to also...
It's like keeping it fallow.
Yes, and I asked myself, so, but they added some myth to it.
Yeah.
If you go there, you see a dwarf, you see something, you see, and these things were done just to also regulate human behavior. You know, human beings by nature will not want to conform.
Yeah.
So, and that's very important. So, folk laws go with myth, and that's where the religion aspect comes in.
Okay.
So that is where, so if most of our taboos, our norms in the community, rural communities, were things that were done just to preserve people. I give an example to my students. Where I grew up in the village, the norm or the taboo was that when you come back from a farm and you have firewood, you know, we put the rope on the firewood. Yeah. The taboo was that when we get home, you don't leave the firewood in the rope. Okay. Like that. Okay. If you leave it, they can fine you.
The idea is for it to dry.
No, that was an idea.
Okay.
The idea was that if you bring the firewood with the rope, a reptile or a snake will be hiding it. Oh. If you leave it, it can hide there and attack anybody. But if you remove the rope immediately and spread it, you can get and kill it.
Oh, okay.
So you see, at the end of the day, but they attach mystery. If you don't do it, the gods will get angry. But I see, so that is how these things, the mystery aspect of it, are mostly to benefit the human being. So at the end of the day, I always tell the student, God will not benefit directly from that. So check, you go to most communities, that's why I like what they said about they are trying to get rid of these things. You realize that most of the taboos, even some of the things that have become traditional heritage, are just because society wanted to benefit. Where I grew up, for example, there's a particular tree we don't use for firewood. Because the oral folk was that the person who first migrated to the place, that was the tree under which he settled. So it became a preservation. So there are some grooves that are preserved. Children don't go there. So these are supposed to preserve. I was telling someone the reason that when I went to the village the last time, when we fetch our water, now the place is dried. Growing up, the taboo was that you don't farm around the river bank. Today, people have decided to go and cut the trees and everything. They are dried up. So these things are mystic. And take note, they attach so much mystery to it because they want people to conform and obey. If they don't attach the mystery to it, people will not conform to it as norms and values of society.
We are notoriously religious, as a theorist once said. I just believe that we use religion to regulate ourselves.
It's a social control mechanism. Without it, and I always tell people that, see, so we like traditional religion, most of the do's and the don'ts are just to regulate human behavior. And that's why I realize that I always tell students that crime is very minimal in traditional society. The fear of the punishment that will come. So that's why most of traditional societies, these traditional sites are still kept. Because people are still, they have this notion, nothing may happen to you. But because of that secret aspect of it, so that's why Deh-Kumah says that religion and society created its own social control mechanism, as you said, or way of social interaction. It is because of the control, that's why they attach mystery and all fear and those things.
Because when they tell you that when you whistle at night, a big snake will come and bite you, you will not whistle at night. Religion is embedded in culture because we use it to regulate ourselves, as we said. We'll be right back. Symbol show on Metro TV, and we are doing this in collaboration with the National Folklore Board, and it's sponsored by the Downwell Insurance. And on these segments, we call it the Sage's Corner. So this is where we share proverbs, and then we give you a little bit of insight into that proverb, so that when you hear it, you won't be confused, and you can also use it in your everyday language.
Which literally means it is when you climb a good tree that we push you.
So this proverb is taken from the Akan people, and it goes like this: Ufru diapa enye piao. Ufru diapa enye piao. So when you climb the right tree, you are helped up, right? You are I'm not an Akan, so if you climb the right tree, you are helped to get to the top. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so as I said earlier on, most of these proverbs and wise sayings were also a result of people's experiences in the environment, as an attempt to, make sense of the environment or manage the environment. So yes, it's also part of the socialization aspect that it also teaches, this proverb teaches people the rudiments of hard work. That in a typical African society, you need to put in effort. You don't need to fold your arms and expect help to come. So, ufu diapa. So, meaning that if you are making an effort, so you see, it goes back to the biblical saying that heaven help those who help themselves. So, the point is that as traditional Africans, hard work is required of every person. So you see, so right from childhood, you are told that you must always make an effort to be able to be helped. If you are folding your arms or you are just sitting down, help won't come from anywhere. It's a way of teaching people about the importance of hard work, the importance of perseverance, the importance of endurance. That no matter what you are going through, help will come when people see the consistency. It also teaches us not to give up in life.
Okay.
That whatever you are doing, people may be interested in supporting you when they see that you are hardworking. And I use this example to my students that growing up where I grew up, what I learned is that people are interested in supporting when they know you are academically good. Yes. I mean, I grew up in Peki, and Peki was noted for education. The Frimamus, the Ababios, and so growing up, the point for us was that the people who we looked up to were mostly educated people. And I tell people that I grew up in a place where you don't have cocoa farms for you to go and work and farm. So education became the leveler or the basic thing everybody looked at. So we look up at people who have been from this village, become medical doctors, engineers, lawyers, the Appiahs and co, lawyer Combs and co. So growing up, I realized therefore that it taught me something. When you put in an effort and we are very good in school, and most of us went to Mauli school because people saw us in my primary GSS that, oh, this boy is very good. If we didn't put in that effort of academic excellence, there was no way we could have gotten to Mauli school and become something today. So the idea is that you must, as a child, whatever endeavor, whether you're a trader, a farmer, I mean, whatever you do, you put in an effort. People will see the effort you put in. So even if people don't have money, the community can come together and support you
to get there.
Yeah.
The National Folklore Board is doing the right thing. At least we are being paid for our artifacts. Intangible as they are still our artifacts. So, and this show is to help you climb that. And we are also calling on corporate body to, come and help us in climbing that good tree. Aunt Bernice, what do you have to say about this?
Thank you. I think Proverbs are a summary of something you want to communicate.
Yeah.
It's instead of writing a lot, I have to encourage the public today that most of our speeches, we should identify one proverb that is acceptable within the occasion. Okay. Then you put that proverb in it. And instead of writing a lot of essays, a lot of explanatory speeches, 2 or 3 proverbs will sum up the whole information for you. Okay. Yes, they are very inspirational. Okay. They encourages us in our daily basis. So National Folklore Board, we are very so much happy when Danwell Insurance come with the proposal to support this segment of promoting our proverbs. So we are hoping that the public will start using the proverbs. The more we use them, it become part of the society. The young ones too will practice it, and then we will not lose them over the years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me just add something that is very important. So that's way of communication. You see, the proverbs also are a means of also, people use it as a means of also intellectual. Oh. So as you said, instead of speaking too much, and if you got biblical, Jesus has a lot of parables.
Yeah.
Yes, so proverbs are equal to Jesus' parables. So the person may speak to you in a proverb, which is a way of telling you something without even talking too much. Okay. So I think it's also a very important way of also getting to understand that not everything you have to talk too much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Madam Sarah, can you give us your last word?
First of all, to thank you for this opportunity to educate the public, because it is part of our mandate to promote folklore in Ghana, and also to encourage users, especially the commercial users of folklore, to do the right thing by approaching the Folklore Board for the appropriate license. In no time, the board will start really fully enforcing the law. And enforcing the law will involve even criminal aspect of it, because the law makes provision for criminal enforcement of that kind of infringement. Apart from the civil aspect of it, which will take you through the courts and all that, the criminal aspect too can have some, jail terms, maximum of 3 years, and some financial, some fines as well. So let's avoid all that. Let's be compliant with the law and do the right thing.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. So we had in our studio Dr. Samson Appiah from the Sociology Department of the University of Ghana. We had Director of the National Folklore Board, Madame Bernice, and Deh-Kumah. And then we also had Sarah Noko Anku, a legal practitioner and also a member of the National Folklore Board. Thank you very much for staying with us. See you next time.